When Charlie Williams walked into the office of Force Tech Solutions, a major defense contractor, no one gave him a second glance. Despite being a decorated U.S. military veteran with a record no one could deny, he was treated like just another faceless employee. That's all he had ever known since joining this company. No warm welcomes, no acknowledgement of his service, just cold stares and whispers behind his back. Charlie wasn't surprised. He knew he wasn't like them. He didn't look like them. He wasn't the polished, well-dressed corporate type who could drop names at fancy dinner parties. His rough, weathered exterior, the tan of someone who had spent too many hours under the sun, and his muscular build from years of tough military service set him apart. But the most painful part, the way people judged him for it. "He's just a soldier, probably can't even spell strategy," they'd murmur as he walked past. It hurt. It really did. But when Victor Hall, the CEO of Force Tech, gave him that cold, dismissive look and said with a smirk, "Charlie, you're not cut out for strategy. You're just a grunt, not a leader." That was the moment that stung the most. It felt like being slapped in the face with the full weight of someone else's arrogance. He had every right to be angry. And for a moment, he wanted to let that anger loose, show Victor just how wrong he was. But instead, Charlie held it in. He had learned long ago in the military how to control his emotions, how to turn frustration into something useful. But damn, it was hard. Charlie was different. He didn't come from an Ivy League school. He didn't have a powerful family backing him. And his resume didn't include the kind of flashy titles that seemed to matter so much in the corporate world. But what no one knew was that Charlie had faced battles in places most people would never dare venture. The kind of battles that tested everything about a person, stripped them down to their core, and forced them to become something stronger than they ever thought possible. He didn't need a fancy degree to prove what he was capable of. He had lived through hell, and he had survived. The thing is, I always thought this job was just something temporary, something to get by. But everything changed fast. Every day I walked into that office, I felt like I was swallowing my pride just to get through it. And every time I saw Victor sneer at me, it felt like I was being ground into the dirt. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that I wasn't going to just roll over. I wasn't going to let them push me down forever. I didn't know it yet, but this place, this company, it was about to see a side of me no one could have ever imagined. Charlie had always been the underdog, overlooked and underestimated by everyone around him. But as he faced the daily microaggressions and outright disrespect, a part of him started to burn with a quiet determination. He wasn't just going to survive in this environment. He was going to make them regret ever doubting him. The first few months at Force Tech were hell. I wasn't given much responsibility. In fact, most days I was stuck doing grunt work, filing reports, fetching coffee, and trying to stay out of everyone's way. It felt like a joke. Every time I tried to speak up or offer an idea, Victor would shoot me down. He'd look at me like I was some kind of military relic that had no place in the real world. I could feel the sting of his words every time he belittled me, every time he dismissed my experience like it was meaningless. But deep down, I knew something he didn't. I wasn't here to just take orders. I was here to prove them wrong. I spent my nights going over everything, the strategies, the reports, the training manuals, every single detail I could find that might give me an edge. I could have just followed orders like everyone expected me to, but I wasn't built that way. I wasn't built to just fade into the background and let people walk all over me. The Army taught me how to survive. No, more than that. It taught me how to win. The military doesn't give up, and neither do I. One afternoon, as I sat in the break room eating my usual bland lunch, the office buzzed with the arrival of a new contract, one that could make or break Force Tech's reputation. The team was scrambling to put together a proposal, and I could feel the tension in the air. They were looking for someone to lead the charge. But when I walked into the meeting room, all eyes went straight to Victor. They didn't even bother asking me for my input. It was like I didn't exist, and I could hear the whispers. "He doesn't have what it takes. Just a soldier. What does he know about this stuff?" I didn't let it show, but inside something snapped. I had enough. I could feel the fire building inside me. The same fire that had kept me going through war, through loss, through everything life had thrown at me. They didn't know me. They didn't know what I could do. So I stayed quiet. I took a deep breath and waited. I knew my moment would come. A week later, the pressure of the contract was reaching its peak. The team was floundering. Victor was about to make a decision that would likely screw up everything. Everyone could see it, except him. He was too wrapped up in his own ego to see it, and there, in the midst of the panic, was my chance. I raised my hand quietly at first, just enough to get the attention of the room. No one thought I had any ideas worth listening to, but when I opened my mouth, I didn't speak like a grunt anymore. I didn't speak like the guy who cleaned up after everyone else. I spoke like someone who had led men into battle, someone who knew how to make tough decisions when everything was on the line. I think we're missing something here, I said, my voice calm but sure. The proposal needs a deeper understanding of the operational side of things, not just the numbers. We need to focus on logistics, not just theoretical strategies. I could see Victor's eyes narrow, like he was trying to figure out if I was serious or just messing with him. The room went silent, and for the first time they were listening. I don't care if you've been in the field or not, but you need to trust me on this one, I added. You can't just throw ideas at a wall and hope they stick. We need precision. We need something that actually works. Victor shifted uncomfortably, clearly pissed, but he couldn't argue with the truth. I had been in situations where lives depended on those kinds of decisions, and I wasn't about to let him screw this up. The room was still quiet. I could feel the weight of the moment. Was I about to be shut down again? Or would they listen? I didn't know. But I wasn't going to back down. Then, to my surprise, one of the senior engineers, a guy who had never given me the time of day, spoke up. You know, he's right. We've been too focused on the theory. Maybe it's time to ground this in something more practical. And just like that, the tide started to turn. I wasn't expecting anyone to have my back, especially not after everything that had happened. But there it was. Someone saw the value in my experience, in my perspective. The meeting shifted. People started talking to me as if I wasn't just some soldier they'd hired for the hell of it. By the end of the day, we had a solid proposal on the table. And as I walked out of that conference room, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of pride. I didn't need Victor's approval. I didn't need anyone's validation. I just needed to do the job, and that's exactly what I did. But it wasn't over. This was just the start. I could feel the change in the air. The team had finally seen what I could bring to the table, and I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't just some guy in the background anymore. I had a voice, and I was going to use it to make damn sure they knew who I was. Sometimes you've got to swallow your pride, put in the work, and wait for your moment. But when that moment comes, you don't just speak up. You show them exactly what you're made of. I never expected things to go down the way they did. After that proposal meeting, I thought I had earned a little bit of respect. At least that's what I told myself. But it was a few days later when I realized just how wrong I was. It was another typical day at Force Tech. The office was buzzing with activity, everyone running around, trying to meet some impossible deadline for a new contract. I had my head buried in reports, trying to get ahead of things, when Victor barged into the room, his voice already raised. "Charlie, this is unacceptable," he snapped, pointing at the stack of files on my desk. "You missed an important detail in the report. How hard can it be to do a job right?" I knew he was trying to provoke me. Hell, I could see it in the way he strutted in, all high and mighty, like he owned the place. But something inside me snapped. I was done taking the punches, done being the punching bag for someone who hadn't done half of what I had to get here. I stood up. "Victor, I've been working my ass off. I don't need you breathing down my neck every time something goes wrong." His face went red. "You don't talk to me like that, Williams. You're a soldier, not a manager. You don't get to speak to me like we're on the same level." His voice was full of venom, like he was trying to tear me down, make me small. I felt the weight of his words, but instead of letting them crush me like they always had, I stood taller. "Actually, Victor," I said, each word deliberate, "I've led teams into battles where every decision mattered. I've commanded people who trusted me with their lives. So yeah, maybe you're right. I'm not a manager, but I sure as hell know how to lead." The room went quiet. All eyes were on us. My heart was pounding, but I didn't let it show. I knew this was my moment. If I backed down now, I'd lose every ounce of respect I had just gained. This wasn't just about winning a damn argument. It was about proving to everyone in that room, and especially to Victor, that I wasn't just some grunt they could push around. Victor scoffed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You think your military background means anything here? This is a business, Williams, not a battlefield. I don't need a soldier telling me how to run things. I could feel the tension rising. It was like I could hear the collective breath of the office holding steady, waiting for me to crumble, to show weakness. But there was no way I was going to let him walk all over me again. Not today. Not after everything I'd been through. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice firm. This isn't a battlefield, but you're wrong if you think I don't know how to win in the real world. I'm not here to follow orders. I'm here to make sure we get it right, no matter what it takes. If that's not what you want, then maybe you should find someone else. It was like a switch flipped in the room. The air thickened, the tension palpable. Victor didn't know how to respond. His face was a mixture of shock and rage. And for a split second, I thought he might actually do something, throw me out, make an example of me. But instead, he stood there, frozen. And in that moment, the entire room was silent. No one spoke. No one moved. It felt like a standoff, and I was just waiting for someone, anyone, to blink first. Finally, Victor's eyes narrowed. You've got a lot of nerve, Williams, but fine. You want to lead? Let's see if you can handle it when the pressure's on. His voice was low, full of threat. But that was it. That was his last play. He thought he could intimidate me, break me down like he had with everyone else. But I wasn't backing down, not this time. Not after everything I had been through. I had walked through hell, fought battles where the stakes were life and death, and I was damn sure I wasn't going to let some arrogant suit make me feel small again. You got it, Victor, I said, my voice calm but unwavering. I'll handle it. And just like that, the shift happened. For the first time, I felt like I was no longer the underdog in the room. Sure, they might have thought I was just a soldier who didn't belong, but now I could see the doubt creeping into their eyes. They didn't know it yet, but I had just taken control. Victor might have thought he had the power, but I had something far more dangerous, the will to fight back. And now the battle had only just begun. It was a feeling I hadn't had in years, the kind of satisfaction that comes when you stop running from your past and finally start using it to shape your future. This wasn't just about Victor or the company. This was about me proving to myself that I could still win, that I could still be the one to take charge when it mattered most. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone push me aside. Let the game begin. Things didn't change overnight, but they did start to shift. The following days at Force Tech were full of tension, a heavy silence that hung in the air whenever I walked into a room. Victor's cold glares were still there, but something had changed. His threats felt weaker, less certain. And the whispers? They were still there, but now they weren't about me being some grunt who didn't know how to handle things. People were starting to talk about me differently. Not just the guys in the office who had barely noticed me before, but even the higher-ups who had never thought twice about what I could bring to the table. I guess that's how things go in the military, too. There's always that first moment where someone looks at you and wonders if you've got what it takes. And then, when you've survived, when you've proved yourself, they start looking at you differently. It's not instant, but it's real. The shift happens when they stop seeing you as the underdog and start seeing you as someone who's earned their place. And when that moment comes, it feels damn good. Victor didn't change. He didn't get it. He still didn't see the value in what I was trying to do. He was too busy, too wrapped up in his own sense of control. So the tension between us didn't just fade away. Instead, it became this constant low hum, like a tension in the air that you couldn't quite escape. Every time he looked at me, there was this simmering resentment. He still thought I was just a soldier, not someone who could truly lead or make decisions. But the real shift came when I had to lead. Not just manage a few tasks, but when the whole damn team was looking to me for answers. It was a Friday afternoon, and the clock was ticking down on the deadline for the new contract proposal. Everyone was in panic mode, running around trying to get their parts done. But something was off. The presentation wasn't coming together like it should have. I could feel it. I could see it in the way people were scrambling, in the way their faces showed doubt. That's when Victor called an emergency meeting. The atmosphere was thick with uncertainty, and I could tell he was about to pass the blame on to someone. And I just knew. This was it. This was the moment where all that work, all that silent proving I'd done, would come to a head. If I didn't step up now, everything I'd fought for would crumble. I stood up. Victor, we need to adjust the approach. The current proposal isn't going to work for the clients. We're missing the logistics side completely. His face darkened immediately. What do you know about logistics? He sneered. You're not qualified to make that call. I took a breath. I wasn't going to let him drag me down again. I may not be qualified in your eyes, Victor, but I've led teams in places where failure isn't an option. When you're out there in the field, with lives at stake, you learn quickly that the smallest mistake can be fatal. So yeah, I know a thing or two about getting it right, even when the odds are stacked against you. For a moment I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. It was doubt, but not about what I could do. It was doubt about his own authority. He shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable, but I didn't let him off the hook. We can keep pretending this is just another office meeting, or we can face the facts. This project's about more than just numbers. It's about getting it done, and right now, we're not even close. The silence was deafening. People were looking at me like they hadn't seen me before. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, and for a second, I thought I might choke. But then out of nowhere it happened. The head engineer, Mark, a guy who had always kept his distance from me, never really cared much about my input, stood up. He's right, Mark said, his voice steady. We've been missing something critical. We need a more strategic perspective, not just the numbers. That moment was like a spark in a powder keg. It wasn't just that Mark agreed with me. It was the fact that people were starting to believe in what I was saying. They weren't just tolerating me anymore. They were listening. Victor didn't say anything. He just sat there glaring at me like he couldn't believe it. Like he couldn't believe that his so-called grunt had just completely turned the room around. The proposal didn't get perfect overnight, but we adjusted the approach, and we pulled it off. The team pulled it off. It felt strange. That satisfaction wasn't about the contract or the win. It wasn't even about me being right. It was about something else. It was the realization that I'd done exactly what I set out to do. Not to prove anything to Victor, but to prove to myself that I wasn't just some washed-up soldier, that I had the skills, the experience, and the grit to not just survive in the corporate world, but to lead. Victor didn't speak to me for the rest of the day, and honestly, I didn't care. I wasn't looking for his approval anymore. The people who mattered now knew what I could do. They had seen it firsthand. And in that silence, in that moment of victory, something else shifted. For the first time in a long while, I realized I wasn't just some guy on the outskirts anymore. I wasn't just fighting for a spot. I had earned my place. Victor might have thought I was just a soldier who didn't belong in the world of suits and PowerPoints. But by the end of that day, he knew better. And so did everyone else in that room. I had made my mark, and I wasn't going anywhere. It felt like everything had changed, but deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Not really, not yet. I'd proven a lot of people wrong, including Victor. But there was something more to it than just earning respect or getting the upper hand. It was about finally being seen, not just as a soldier, not just as a guy who could follow orders or take the hits, but as someone who could think on his feet, make decisions under pressure, and actually lead. But there was one thing I hadn't anticipated, how much I would grow in the process. At first, I thought the victory would be sweet. I'd prove myself. I'd show everyone what I was capable of, and that would be it. But as time passed, something strange happened. I started looking at everything differently. The way I approached work, the way I saw my team, and even the way I viewed Victor, there was a quiet realization that kept creeping up on me. Victor wasn't the enemy. I had been fighting to prove myself for so long, so damn hard, that I didn't see it. The real battle was with the version of myself that I had been running from for so long. The part of me that thought I didn't belong, that I wasn't enough. And the worst part, I was still carrying that version of myself around, like baggage. But there was something powerful about standing up for yourself, about showing up for yourself, and not waiting for someone else to give you permission to be who you really are. Once I started to take control, I realized it wasn't about making people like me or fit into a mold that didn't make sense. It was about being true to who I was and letting the pieces fall where they may. I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect the journey to hit me the way it did. Sure, the contract we worked on was a success, and people were starting to see my value. But as I walked out of that office one evening, a strange thought hit me. This job, this company, they weren't the end goal. They were a stepping stone, a place to learn, grow, and ultimately make an impact in ways I had never imagined before. I found myself thinking back to my time in the military. I'd seen things that no one should have to see, lived through moments where I couldn't afford to second-guess myself. That was where the real leadership was born. In the thick of it, when everything felt uncertain and every decision could make or break everything. I took those lessons with me into the office, and they helped me navigate this corporate world where every move felt like it mattered more than it did. But what really stuck with me was that leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about staying calm, being consistent, and knowing when to take charge. And I had learned how to do that in ways I never expected. I remember a conversation I had with Mark, the engineer who had backed me up in that meeting. After everything was done, he came up to me, out of the blue, and said, "You know, I thought you were just another guy trying to survive here, but you've got more going on than I realized. I respect that." It wasn't a grand gesture, it wasn't some fancy speech, but for a guy like me, who had spent most of his life being overlooked, it was everything. But even with all the respect, the victories, and the progress, I knew there was still unfinished business. Victor, I could see the cracks in his armor. He hadn't let go of the control, the power, the need to be right. But here's the thing. I didn't need him to change. I didn't need his approval or anyone else's for that matter. What I needed was to keep showing up. Keep proving that I wasn't just here to take orders. I was here to leave my mark. And then, one afternoon, it happened. The final piece fell into place when Victor called me into his office. He had that look on his face, the one I used to dread. He was about to tear into me over something, or so I thought. But instead, he dropped a folder on the table and said, "You did good, Williams. I've seen the work you've put in, and it's not gone unnoticed." I was stunned. I hadn't expected that. Not from him, not from the guy who had done everything in his power to hold me back. But there it was, his grudging respect. It wasn't the apology I might have wanted, but in a way, it was better. It was acknowledgement. I left that meeting with a strange feeling. It wasn't relief or joy. It was more like peace. A quiet understanding that I wasn't just fighting for a position at Force Tech anymore. I was fighting for something bigger, myself. The rest of the world might have written me off, but I wasn't going to do that to myself anymore. Looking back, it wasn't the promotion or the approval that meant the most. It was the realization that I had fought my hardest battle, not with Victor, not with anyone in the office, but with the doubt I had always carried inside me, and I won. I walked into that building day after day, knowing that I had earned my place there, and for the first time in a long while, I could look myself in the mirror and know that I wasn't just surviving, I was living. That's the message I want to leave you with. No one can define your worth but you, not Victor, not anyone. Keep fighting for yourself, because at the end of the day, the only approval you truly need is your own. And trust me, once you give that to yourself, you'll be unstoppable. The world is full of people trying to tell you who you should be, where you fit, and what you're capable of. But the truth is, you're the only one who gets to decide. Don't let anyone take that power away from you. The core message of this story is simple yet powerful. Never let others define your worth, especially in the face of injustice or prejudice. Throughout the narrative, Charlie faces countless challenges, from being underestimated and belittled to dealing with toxic work environments and personal doubts. But what truly changes for him, and what we can all take from his journey, is the realization that the most important approval you need is your own. In life, we all encounter negative relationships and biases that make us question ourselves. But by standing firm, asserting our value, and refusing to let others' perceptions shape who we are, we can break free from those chains. This story encourages us to confront unfairness, silence toxic voices, and push past self-doubt. It's not just about winning battles in the workplace or gaining respect. It's about finding our own voice, reclaiming our dignity, and understanding that our self-worth is not dependent on the opinions of others. A tree is known by its fruit, and just as with Charlie, the value you carry within will eventually speak for itself. If you've ever felt overshadowed or dismissed, remember that your worth is built not on what others think of you, but on your own resilience and integrity. It's about knowing your own strength and using it to rise above. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How have you faced similar challenges in your own life? Share your experiences or leave a comment if you have a story that resonates with this one. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking videos. Take care, stay strong, and remember, even after the storm, the sun always finds its way through.